Hello, 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 and welcome to another Daily Code Fun. I am One Lion, and I thought I took care of that window before. Anyway, hi, welcome to the stream. We have been working on a project together, having some fun. At least I hope it's fun. It's definitely fun for me. Um, I love writing Blazor code. I love doing full stack dev. Oh man, and now Windows Swap is like, I don't even want to display the video anymore. Um, how do I refresh? Like the very first thing I did 10 minutes ago was refresh the website. So this is a website, by the way, if you didn't know about it, called Window Swap, um, and it is all about showing scenes from outside of people's window across the world. It's just a website, window-swap.com. And it's got some pretty cool videos. I think they're just videos that are on like 20-minute loops, and people have just submitted them over time, and they will just display a random one. So it's not necessarily live or even up to date, but anyway, I thought it was cool. Deflex, I think, was the one that showed it to me. It's really cool. Anyway, I saw Tyrant and Science. If you guys don't know Science, amazing, amazing streamer. Crazy science, crazy goodness. Sometimes aliens on the screen like yesterday. Wow, this is scary stuff. But yeah, let's see if we can get a good clip. Crazy clip. Oh, 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 we can get a clip on this screen. What are we looking at? This little one in back. That was cool. It was cool stuff. Really fun times. He's a really chill person. Awesome laid back. Cool vibes, cool personality. And always wants to talk science and have fun with it. I love fun. Fun is fun. Interesting, President, not sure. So President Not Sure said that C Sharp Fritz got whacked with having to do a Santa voice mod, and it was too much for him. Too much for President Not Sure. It probably isn't too much for C Sharp Fritz. But what did we do last? Last, we set up the database context, added the entities. He thought he removed it. Oh man. Yeah. Managing channel points. That's fun. Managing channel points. What would be funny is if now that he knows about it, he still hasn't removed it. Actually, it wouldn't be funny. Like the one that would be really nice to not have is the hamster voice. But yeah, I don't see it anymore in the redeems. So I think he's good to go. I think he's safe. Yeah, the hamster voice is a bit much. But that's okay. But yeah, I've been lurking over on his channel all morning, just hanging out, because I love being around other productive, developer-minded people that are working on code while I'm doing stuff. And right now, I'm not doing anything that's too interesting. I've been doing a lot of studying, like most recently for an interview that I have for tomorrow. And aside from that, I was also studying for the Azure certification. I think it's AZ400. I can never remember the number. But I'm studying for that certification because I'm currently on a stop work, or I can't bill the client that I was doing work for 2 weeks. That'll end this Friday. And then it's going to happen again in September. And so by the end of that second 2 week stop work, I'll need to have uh, gotten a certification to show my consulting company that I, in fact, was doing personal development and growth and stuff like that. So I've been studying for that. I really, really need to schedule the exam, though. I'm hoping to be able to do it during that second 2 week time frame. But yeah, we'll see how things work out. Anyway. So what we did last time was we set up the database context, added all of the entities, sketched out the properties of all of the tables. I think this is what, maybe we did this 2 times ago. I'm pretty sure 2 times ago we sketched out the design of the database. And then this last time we actually did the entities, and then we created our first migration for the database. Maybe last time the only thing we did was set up the migration, seeded the data. I can't fully remember. You just have to go back and watch the videos and set me straight. So I used Fluent API to configure any of the properties or any of the columns in the table that I wanted to configure, such as setting a whole bunch of lookup tables having a name column to have that name be indexed, as well as have it with a max length. Otherwise, it would default to nvarchar max, which is bigger size than we need, bigger allocations than we need, and we don't need to do that. The other thing that I thought of after we had created the migration was that the table names are taking by default the property names, which I have pluralized. Oh, and we did compare. We did compare. But the property names are pluralized, and so it's creating pluralized table names. Personally, I don't like having pluralized table names in my SQL database. You can convince me otherwise if you do have a strong feeling of why table names should be pluralized. So I don't mind having property names pluralized. The object itself is a single item. That makes perfect sense. I've heard the argument, and I still have not bought into it, that a table is a collection of that type of entity. But also, the same argument has when you query a record from that table, you're getting back one of those items. One row in that table is one of the entities. So I just prefer it to not be pluralized. Plus, you don't have to deal with changing ES to IES, or sorry, something that ends with Y to IES, etc. But again, I might be swayed. Well, yeah, sorry. You're absolutely right. I don't know why I said it that way. Tyron corrected me. Not always one row. Generally, you're getting back 0 or more. True. Um, I totally misspoke. I wasn't even. Man, I hope I don't do this today. Um, but yeah, you're always getting back a DB set. Hello, Captain Commerce. Awesome stream last night. Sorry I couldn't listen in the whole time, but I was definitely there in spirit. Um, so then the argument that he's posing, and again, I'm always using the term argument in a positive note. You almost always get a list, even if the list is one item only, one element, and that is a good argument. Yeah, you don't say pick the best row from all of these rows. Oh man. Yeah, it is two table. Oh man. You pick it from rows. Oh, yeah, from all of these rows. Sorry. So the statement was pick the best row from all of these row. You say pick the best row from all of these rows. Oh man. And do you have a source for that? Or is it industry standard because that's what's widely accepted? Not so like you know how Microsoft Docs has the naming conventions, the C# naming conventions, documentation. Is there a SQL documentation or a RDBMS documentation that says industry standard is pluralize the names of tables? I mean, it shouldn't really matter to me anymore. Like when I was in the database all the time, it would really matter. Like I was constantly doing SQL queries in the database, constantly creating views. And in this case, everything is going to be abstracted behind my DB context. And my DB context is already going to have the pluralized forms of the names of the tables. Okay. Okay, as I said, I could be convinced. And I took the little snippet and I ran with it because I guess I wanted to be convinced because I didn't want to have to recreate the migration anyway. That's a terrible reason. Coding with Scott is here. Oh my gosh. Hello. Welcome in Coding with Scott. But Coding with Scott said, I'm the same way. Table name should be singular. I mean, that's my feeling, but I don't have um, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it is less work. Otherwise, I would have so gosh, interrupting myself. It is going to be like this today. I apologize ahead of time. I'm currently in the mindset of still thinking about big O notation and data structures and how to properly implement a hash table and when to use a hash set versus an array. Hint, you should never use an array if you have the option to use a hash set when doing lookups and comparisons often. Um, yeah, gosh. So my brain is just totally thinking about tomorrow, and it's gonna keep thinking about tomorrow until after after tomorrow's over. Yeah. But Tyron said, also you're using Entity Framework, and Entity Framework defaults to this question mark. Almost Decosoft. I stopped working on that while I'm completely focused on tomorrow. Um, which means less work in the long run because I would have to go through all of these entities and actually it would be really easy for me and just to show it, I'm not going to keep it, but just to show it, I would just do, oh, I would just do also this, um, entity to table, table name, semicolon, and we're done. And now I have named all of the tables their singular version. Except that I don't have all of the tables in here. So I just lied. I would also have to add all of the tables that I don't have in here manually. The alternative is to use what we talked about before, but data annotations, where we could put table name attribute, or maybe it's just table. I think it might be just table. Yeah, just table. And then name them all like this, which again, I could do quickly using um, regex find and replace in Visual Studio. But yeah, it's still convincing enough for me to leave these as pluralized table names because I'm not really directly interacting with the database objects. That's what I was trying to get out. Coding with Scott says, although I must say my singular name is probably more out of what I've learned and have used for decades. I think that's where mine is coming from as well, Coding with Scott. I just kind of remember my database course from 2006 with this nice thick book with tuple calculus and anyway, indicating that table names are singular. But yeah, I don't mind it. I'm not really doing much directly with the database, so it doesn't matter to me as much. And finally, my property names are already pluralized. I'm going with it. So we already have then our migration. So one thing that I like to do after, and if you didn't see the step where we created migration, it's from yesterday's video. It's close to the end, I believe. And yeah, feel free to take a look at it. It's posted as a VOD on Twitch, and it will be up on YouTube after this stream. Captain Comer says, I still have my VB3 book. I'm seeing how they talk about tables. Do they talk about tables in it? Would they talk about tables in it? I mean, I'm assuming that they would talk about ADO or something, but not necessarily. Yeah, okay, so Tyrant, I have heard, Tyrant said the one that gets me is enums, to pluralize or not. The rule of thumb that I heard about enums is day of week, for example, is if you are using the flags attribute, then a day of week could contain more than one value for the same variable. So, for example, if I had var days equals day of weeks, days of week is what it would be called though. Oh my goodness, that was terrible. Days of week dot Monday bitwise or Tuesday. So this, the type on this is still days of week. My bad. Day of week. Thank you, frog dusting. And it makes sense, but of course you have to have this essentially as something that you can bitwise or together. Did you see me thinking about that one? It's only up to 64. Why did I have to think about that one? So essentially, this is just anything that you can add this and this and get a value that's not in the list. This increases quickly, so oftentimes you find yourself having it be a long days of weeks. But yeah, I thought the var days takes care of the pluralization in that example, but the actual type on it also matters, to me at least. So if we wanted to be explicit, like we initialize this thing somewhere above, and then later we set it, then we would know that this can potentially contain more than one day of week. Naming is hard. Good conversation though. And then also I do, is that shift, bit shifting? Because is that's for comparison, isn't it? Or is that what you use for Oh, interesting. I don't think I've ever done this. I don't know if I'd be able to. My brain might break. What am I doing? 3. So as to avoid the math. I mean, my brain would probably be happier doing this. Um, isn't this? No, no, no. This is still decimal notation, isn't it? Yeah, that's still in it. But anyway, good combo. Good conversation. It does look kind of funny, but I mean, again, it does help you not have to worry about doing your times 2 table. It's a C++ thing. Got it. Coding with Scott says plural enum sounds better to me. Also differentiates in properties. I don't like when the enum data type matches the property name. Enum data type matches the property name. Tell me about this. So you have an enum, ebom, ebom's world, that is some name, like line item type. And are you saying that you don't want a field in here, or that it doesn't look good to have a field called line item type? Or are you saying that the encasing property, or encasing class, some, or I guess this would be, yeah, I don't know. Oh, you don't like the property name itself being called that. Okay, so some class, um, public line item type, line item type, get set. I like this a lot myself, personally. It makes sense to me. I don't know what else I would call this thing, especially if I have multiple properties that end with type. So if I also had my recurrence type, is that what I called it? Is that not what I called it? Yeah, recurrence. Oh, but yeah, I do. Then I would need to differentiate this somehow. Dukasoft. I forgot one. Go! I like that. But that's just, again, my personal preference. Um, I can definitely see where it wouldn't make sense to some people, for sure. For sure. Anyway, what I really want to do is now that we created our migration, I want to review this just to make sure that it's not doing anything funny, because, my sense of humor isn't very good. Can't declare the enum inside the class if the property has the same name. Oh, okay, I see you. You're talking about a class, um, some class, public, or not even public. This could be a private enum to this class, or an internal enum, even. Um, but enum, line item type, and have a public line item type, line item type. And so this is invalid because there is, when you try to instantiate a new class, some class, for example, then now you would have an ambiguous dot line item type. We don't know if you're trying to do the enum, especially if this is public. Yeah, let's even do that. So some class dot line item type, although it's not really ambiguous, is it? I don't know why you can't have that, but I mean, it is definitely the case. We can see it here that the compiler is complaining that this property name matches something that is already defined in here as line item type that you can dot off of the class. But it really isn't ambiguous. It would be ambiguous if there were two properties named the same thing. That's interesting. I don't know the reasoning behind why that doesn't work, but it's obvious that it doesn't. But yeah, all of my enums are declared outside unless I'm using them for one specific thing inside of a component. I think that's when I create private enums. Um, okay, okay. And actually, now that you say that, I wonder if I could. I wonder if I could declare this in the same file as my lookup recurrence type. No, I don't like that. Just wondering, just musing. So, as mentioned, I want to review this just to make sure that things are set up the way that I want them to be. Everything has an appropriate identity column. Last updated is non-nullable. So normally I would have last updated as nullable and then provide a default value of system UTC date time, but I'm letting it be non-nullable this time, which means that we have to specify a value every time we are creating a new record. And then I just need to remember to update that value. Another thing we could, another thing we could do for these last updated fields is we could have a trigger that we define on all of the lookup tables that says when we modify a record, update the last updated column for free. So we wouldn't have to manage that in our code. Let's say we forget to actually write the update last updated. It would always happen no matter what. A hair trigger. Well, do you have a picture of that? What would a hair trigger? So it's a spelling pun. Yeah, so let me show you an example of what we would do. Migration builder dot. I'm not going to remember how to do this off the top of my head, but I'm going to do my best. Besides, we have our database expert here, the one that uses Excel for everything. Create trigger update last updated on DBO account types. No. Because the on goes down here. No, it is right. So after update, yeah, so like it's one thing to have stored procedures that you can go into your, I don't have SQL Server Management Studio open anywhere. You can go into your Database Explorer and see here are all of my stored procedures. But for specific table triggers, triggers that are on a table, you have to go to each table itself and look for a trigger there. There is no like consolidated place unless you do a query for seeing all of your table queries. We get database queries, but again, that's on the database itself, not on a given table. But yeah, so then after update, we get a we get two things inside of an after update trigger. We get the old and we get the new, and they're both sets of records that were affected. And what we would do is, I want to make Captain Commerce twitch a little bit. We would open a cursor. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We would not do a cursor. We would do a um, oh no. Oh no. We have a picture. And yes, I'm twitching. Here's what a hair trigger looks like. It is a hair triggering a mustached, but I can't come up with words. I'm not clever. But so I can't think of this off the top of my head, but we would essentially need to loop through actually no, we don't even need to loop through. We just do update account type plural. See, this is where it would completely throw me off having pluralized table names. Set last updated equals sys utc date time. I think this is the right one. And hello, Abaddus. Did I already say hello? I don't know if I said hello. Excuse me. Can I get a new query? Yes, that is the correct one. Sys UTC date time. And this would be our AT from, hey, I think that was it. From DBO dot account types join inserted. Now, isn't this supposed to be like, I didn't think that it was inserted. I could have sworn that it was old and new. Maybe that's just the aliases that I give them usually. So this would be new. Hello, Zotralord. I need to look this up. SQL server trigger update. After update, it is inserted. Okay, it's inserted. So then what's old? Isn't there a way to get the old value? Whatever, we don't need it here. Point is that this would be the trigger that we put on all of our lookup tables if we wanted to. Old is deleted. Oh, thank you, Blazor, Mr. Magoo. So if we were doing after delete, we would get old. Sounds funny. Anyway, this would also be how actually this is not quite how I would do the SQL anyway. The way that I would do the SQL is I would create this in an actual SQL file. Don't get deleted. Inside of my database table. So I would have a whole bunch of scripts that I am going to manually run, and I would manually run that script in the appropriate DB context. That includes updated scripts as well. You get deleted and inserted on any trigger. They just don't always have rows. Oh, so my bad. I misread. So the answer is not after delete. Here we have inserted, and we also have, like, if we were to declare old, I don't know, old last updated, which is going to be the current last updated, but old last updated as date time. And then we would do select old, gosh, it's been a minute. Old last updated equals last updated from deleted. So we would get the deleted object, except it's not always going to have a row. Is what Blazor Mr. Muggo clarified for me because of my learning disability at the moment. I got this though. But if you did that, I would slap the keyboard out of your hands. So that would give me the most recent last deleted value from the set of records in last deleted. I wouldn't get every old last deleted value populated since I'm setting it to a scalar. It would just be the most recent one seen. I'm going to say that confidently, but I could be wrong. It could be the first one you encounter. In either case, you only get one value back. But yeah, so the point here that I was trying to make is if there were any special things that I wanted to happen during this migration, I would still be able to put it into the migration itself. I have heard people shun that. They aren't very either comfortable or just don't think it's appropriate to do any modifications to the migration inside of the generated migration file. I wish I could use JavaScript on server. You can on SQL Server. Oh, you want the triple equals. Yeah, you can't even use C#. It's just comparing via regular equals. Anyway, yes, I'm okay with modifying the migration. Create the indexes on, and yes, I did say indexes. So triggers are scripts that run when a DB event insert update delete happens. Exactly. Yes, Dukasoft. And they can be on specific tables or they can be on the database itself. And then you handle what to do with it at that point in time. But yeah, we would know, at least we would know that I have triggers on certain tables because I would have a scripts folder that has the views, the triggers, any custom indexes that are more complex than the index that we would create using Entity Framework Fluent API. Those would all be in scripts, and then we would read the file essentially and then execute the script in migration builder.sql. But I'm okay with this. However, I am also going to inspect the SQL that gets generated by this to make sure that there's nothing funny happening there either. So the next thing I'm going to do is script migration, making sure that I have my migrations project set as the startup and set in my default project. And this thing will give me all of the SQL that needs to be run to get the database from blank, from empty, to the current state. How about having last updated in an interface, and EF sets the value when saving if the object implements the interface? That sounds complicated. I don't know that I would be able to come up with the answer for how to do that. So right now, for example, all of my lookup items implement iLookupItem of Tiki. And so that definitely has a last updated. So essentially, I would say if anything implements an iLookupItem, then Entity Framework would set the value for that when saving. I really don't know how to do that. I can't even, yeah, I just can't. My brain says I have no idea how to think of that. Okay, Captain Commerce, thanks for being here. Do the weights. Take a cold shower. Let's go for you. Don't come back here smelly. Make people run off. Look at it. Cookies, tacos, flavorful nachos. Yeah, so the thing that I'm scanning through, just so that you know, is I'm making sure that the primary key is getting sent. Smell you later. And that my primary keys are getting set as identity, not null. So primary key is getting set to ID and then my IDs. And of course, I'm reading it in that order because that's the way that my brain works. There should be one that we want to pay close attention to. And then I'm going to come back and look at the foreign key constraints. But the one that I want to pay close attention to is look up recurrence types. Oh. How did... I think I missed one. I see. Apps. I see what I did here. Okay, so I am going to have to redo this migration anyway because when I named my property for... I didn't create a property for it. Oh, wait. What? That's really confusing. Okay, so we had a discussion before about relating hello? Okay, relating categories to payees. Here's my payee. And here is my category. Yeah, so here's my relationship between one category can belong to multiple payees and one payee can have multiple categories. Cool. Don't worry, I'm confused as well. But the table that it created for me, so I had the option of either explicitly creating the table that did this and then having the intermediary many to one, one to many. So that would be a many to many relationship with a one to many on both sides. in that intermediary table. Um, but I decided that I'm not really going to be interacting with that middle table directly. So why not just let Entity Framework create it for me by having the categories associated with the payees directly? Because in most cases, I will want to go from payees to their list of categories directly instead of needing to go payees dot payee categories dot categories or dot names or whatever I'm getting from that dot select many or whatever. Um, so the table name that it created for me though still ended up being lookup category payee. So it took the object type and it didn't pluralize it. Oh, I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyway, Coding with Scott gave me an example of using a base class to override the save changes. So there is a modified date that is going to be in employee and department. And so save changes would be when you're saving changes, you're casting it to an entity information. There's like no check on here to see if you can cast to an entity information though. But yeah, essentially it would kind of be a switch statement for me, where the entity that's getting put in here, we are switching to see if it can turn into an I blah 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 blah. I lookup item, for example. Hello, Max. It's been a while. Welcome back. We're currently working on a new project. Yeah, this is only from 2015. They build it in the list on line 23. I'd rather use if object is iTrack history. So let me go back here. Line 23. Oh, okay. I didn't see this because syntax highlighting. Skimmed right over it. Okay, so yeah, so they're extracting any items that were of that specific type that was either added or modified. And then they are modifying the modified date. You know, I kind of like that. So it's a financial management tracker, Max. Max was asking what's the new project about? And what's the updated time? I don't know. Is that actually on here? Oh yeah, that is the you're right. That is the updated date. So it was probably created even before that. But that's fine. I mean, it's still relevant. Like I could override the save changes and set modified date. And that way we could still manage it programmatically. I'm not super angry about that. Do you actually use this approach, Coding with Scott? Because I kind of like it. So instead of having a default value in the database or a database trigger or need to remember every single time that I'm trying to save a I'm not mad at that. Every time I'm trying to save one of these lookup records, let me just make sure that this is still something that's overridable. Yes. Okay. So in EF core, whatever we're on, save changes is still an overridable method. Yeah, save changes. There's an issue. Will I have to override all of them? Or do they all eventually call save changes? My assumption is I would. So here's what we'll do. We'll extract this logic here to a separate function. Update last update. You know what? I'm keeping it. Update last updated. So this is going to be adapted from that. Can you use is with an interface? Oh, you know what though? I made it difficult on myself. Ah, dang it. Okay, so I kind of made it difficult on myself because I am not specifying the key type. I could have this kind of placeholder iLookupItem interface. And this way, I just don't specify the key on here, and everything would be an iLookupItem. Oh my goodness. And so as long as we inherit from iLookupItem, or we implement iLookupItem of type law, yeah, I'm okay with that. So Max is saying, it's been a while because I haven't programmed much in the last few weeks, and your stream time is kind of weird for me. Yeah, it moved quite a bit. But I think I'll program from now on more. And I have summer holidays, so I'm playing a lot. Awesome. I hope you're having fun with it. So I think I also want to modify this. And I don't know if this is going to work the way that I think it will, but I want to use of type. That way I can cast it directly. Oh, but I would have to select the entities. There we go. And then we can do uptype like this. And that'll clean this up. And this is last updated UTC now. Okay. Yeah. Wait, that's not my formatting. What are you doing? Okay, so I think I like this better. I'm sure there's something more I can do with it, but that's what I got for now. So for you, and you all do update last updated first, and then you do save changes. Cool. Look up my. There we go. And this is also going to help me out in the long run anyway, because I wanted to store a cached list of lookup items anyway. But I didn't want to have to keep track of only doing the ones for ints, only doing the ones that use the specific enum as the primary key. It's also possible that eventually we'll be like, you know what, GUIDs make more sense for our lookup items, since we aren't necessarily ordering by, since we're ordering by an arbitrary thing, and that order by can be updated. You know. But Max also said, I think after I finish my portfolio, I will do a challenge or something. When I learned a bit of Blazor, like 10H, 10 apps, 10 hours, 10 apps. Oh, your challenge would be do 10 apps in 10 hours? Holy cow. Maybe 2 apps in 10 hours. Okay, I'll be here. But anyway, all of these changes that we made to our database context and even this interface thing, they aren't affecting the overall structure of the database. So our initial migration, still fine. We don't need to recreate it or anything like that. We didn't change the structure of our entities or the way that they are inside of our database. But I like this approach. I'm going to have to remember this. I like being able to intercept the save changes and then do my last updated modifications there. I like that. And that is on add or modified, which means that even though I gave myself a datetime.utc now default, oh, even better coding with, oh my gosh. So this is also nice if you need to encrypt data at rest. Oh man, all of the implications of using something like overriding save changes. Thank you. Thank you so much for that tip. I actually don't need this anymore, but I'm going to keep it there. But we wouldn't need it. Okie dokie. I like ducks. That should be it for our database then. Let's see if we can get it to create our database for us. Let me make sure I don't already have an object in LocalDB named Finance Man. Nope, I have my regular financial management. So Finance Man is the name of my database. Let's apply it. Speaking of encrypt, how would you encrypt stuff like phone numbers in a DB? Hash and salt? Well, I don't know. How to encrypt it in a DB when you want to get it back, too. I said hash and salt, salt and hash. Because, like, in most cases, if you're storing a phone number in the database, you are needing to eventually retrieve that phone number for various purposes, sending texts, automated calls, spam, heckling, giving the phone number to other people that can also spam you. So it would have to just be whatever encryption algorithm you happen to be using. And so it would most likely be either shared key or PKI. So yeah, it just a standard something like um, I can't think of any of the asymmetric key encryptions. DES? Is that one of the bad ones? Anyway, I would use an asymmetric key encryption where you have your private key that is stored somewhere securely that only you are able to decrypt using that library that uses that private key. And of course, you encrypt it using the public key. Did I pass? Do I get an F? I mean an A? Update database. Cool. I just can't remember the encryption algorithms. Yes, I am Security Plus certified and I know about them. Um, I just can't think of them off the top of my head. Wait, that password is different? I get a C sharp. No. Oh, okay. So I hate these errors because I don't actually know what the correct approach is. So let's take our time with this. What this is telling me is for a couple of my tables that have foreign key constraints, so they're related to each other. Thank you, Stream Elements. That's not the right answer, though. It's a good shout out though. If you guys haven't checked out his game on Steam, check out Irish John Games. Irish John Games' game on Steam, Rise of Piracy. Just take a look at it, see if you like it, wishlist it, tell people about it, tell them to wishlist it. He's aiming for the end of this year for early access, and yeah, he also streams every day at 2 p.m. my time, which is UTC -6. Yes, yar is true. He was working on his his sandworm. He has a sandworm in a pirate game, which is awesome. It is absolutely awesome. And yeah, see you later, Max. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for being here. Okay, so our transfers table, which is associated with a few other tables, that has a cascading on delete, and it's this transaction. Um, what's it called? Transfer table. It's right here. Just keep your eyes open. You'll be able to see it. So we are associating our transactions table with two records. our transfer table with 2 records from the transaction table. And what could happen is we will delete one record in transactions that will affect the transfer table on cascade delete, which will then also affect the transaction table for the second record that is getting deleted. So what I think I need to do is on the transaction table, I need to say when we're doing a delete, don't make any changes in the transaction table. Oh, I'm sorry, Dukasoft is right. We just do drop table. Okay, we were close. We were really close. So the way that I am undoing my migration is simply by deleting that migration folder. Since this is my first database migration that we're trying to get set up, it's just that simple. You want to start your migrations over, delete the migrations table. Alternatively, I could have done a remove migration. Since it wasn't applied, I would do remove migration. This is going to tell me there are no migrations. So, and that would have reverted my snapshot to the previous migration, and then I would have deleted the migration file from the migrations folder, just the one that we were targeting. So anyway, we need to manually configure the relationship between transfers and transactions. I'm going to do it here since I already have a transaction, but we could do it in either entity. You only have to do it once. And I'm going to say entity.transaction. Oh, transaction detail. No, it is transaction. What am I doing? Entity dot has one transaction has 0 or 1 transfer. So has one. Oh my goodness, I can't do this. Transfer. That's not how you do this either. I don't have a relationship in transaction to get to transfer. I only have the foreign key constraint in the transfer table. Man, okay. What I could do is have a deleted flag and always do soft deletes, because these are not nullable. And I would need logic that says if I delete a transfer, if I delete a transaction or mark a transaction as deleted, then I would also need to mark the associated transfer, if there is one, as deleted, as well as the associated other transaction as deleted. I have another thought. What if, and this is a big what if my transfer was actually associated with my transaction detail? And I had, in essence, a from transaction detail ID to transaction detail ID, because I need 2 different accounts. That's why. I need the transfer to be from account to account. But in this case, The from account would be the transaction account ID. Oh. Oh, what if, and this is a big what if, you there. Can I get my whiteboard, please? Blaze, hello. Mobile Studio. Hello. Weird kid. What if my transfer instead was another thing that's kind of like a transaction detail? So a transaction will either have a transaction detail or a transfer record. And in that transfer record, we would have target account ID. Yes, this really is my handwriting. And the math. Oh, I don't like this for the implications of trying to do the math. So it'd be really easy to do the math. Oh, right. Because dang it, this thing is so hard to use. That didn't work either. Let's give it one more try. There we go. Okay. Only if you haven't designed very well. So if you don't do upfront design, then the answer is yes, Dukasoft. So Dukasoft's question is it normal to have a lot of migration changes when creating a new app? Upfront, no. Like the very first database migration, as long as you designed your database ahead of time and did it well, you don't have to worry about doing very many migration changes. As you are writing the app and adding features and functionality to the application, you may find yourself needing to add fields to the database, to tables. You may find yourself needing to add a new view that's going to make it easier to get data. You may find yourself adding a new table. Okay, so a transaction ID. And so I'm just sketching this out, but we may not go in this route. But the transfer will have a transaction ID and an account ID as the target account ID. And what this would do for us is when we're doing our maths, oh man. Then we would have to, for a given account, select all transactions and sum the transaction detail amounts. So we would select all transactions for that account, sum the detail amounts, and add all transfer. We should be able to do this directly though. And also subtract all of the transfer amounts for that account. The problem is if we do it like this, the transfer ID or the transfer record is potentially null. Same with the transaction. So if it's a transfer, transaction detail is null. And if it's a transaction like a regular, I'm paying a store for some goods, transfer is null. I don't think that that's so bad. But also, I would have yeah, man. Okay. Transfer, or actually here, when calculating the total amount, and this might be where we would want to create a view that consolidates our transfers and transaction details for a given account. Hello, Irish John Games. We were just hyping you up earlier. Looking forward to the release of Rise of Piracy, or at least the early access of it. Seeing what people think about it soon-ish. S***N. You're seeing the top of my head because I'm writing on a tablet with chisel and hammer. So when we're calculating the total for a given account, we need to use transactions where account ID equals account dot ID.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Me too. Do you not like this approach? Because I don't either. And we would plus the sum of transaction detail dot amount minus the sum of transfer dot amount. Like another approach that I'm thinking of that could potentially get rid of this issue is to add the account ID to a transaction detail. But once again, this is going to be null for just about every record, except for the times when you are doing something like paying off your credit card or transferring money from checking to savings or savings to checking. Or if you have a business and you're transferring from your checking account to your business account, or from your business account to your checking, whatever the case may be, transferring money between accounts really does seem like it should be its own table. So what I could do is have a read-only property, public, and this would be ignored by the database. So public bool is transfer, and that is going to be a set once, so it's going to be a get. I can't do it that way because I would have to set it in the constructor if I do it this way. I could do a get init, but that's still not going to work. So anyway, we'll just make it an arrows read-only function that will evaluate every time you want to look at it, which is the transfer record associated transfer object is not null. let's try this. Let's see what this looks like. So my transfer table is not going to have these two things. Instead, it's going to have an account ID and a transaction ID. And the transaction is going to be that, and we will have an associated account. And this is actually going to be target account, just to make it clear that the originating account needs to be in the transaction, and then the target account is going to be in the transfer record. This will never be null because we must have a transaction ID and an account ID for a transfer record. However, in the transaction record, we're either going to have transaction details, which is nullable. This could be 0 or more. Actually, it's not going to be nullable because I'll always initialize it to a new hash set. And a public virtual transfer. This is nullable. And this is where I said we can have that read-only variable. Where transfer is not null. And this would be, what is it? db ignore? Not db ignore. Not mapped. Yeah. Dugasoft says, if transaction greater than 0, target account equals Dugasoft.account. Yes. Thindle comes in and he approves. Hello, Thindle. So many fantastic, cool looking people. I mean, not just cool looking, but cool people in our stream. If you guys haven't seen anything from him, especially you on YouTube's out there, come over to Twitch every now and then. Take a look at Irish John Games.
Reference not set. Destroyable go with HP. Untested. Fuck you, future John. Oh, no way. No way. Past John is such a dick. Did you see this?
Oh my god.
Oh,
I need
no.
to make comments like that for myself. Oh, that's perfect. So good. And then one more for Thindle. So, Tyron, by the way, didn't you say that you also stream? I'm confused. I didn't think that you actually streamed. Do you stream? Is that just a thing you do on occasion? No, you do not. You just help write. You just help write bots. You haven't streamed since Mixer. That's a long time. But here is Thindle. Thindle is the author of an extension called Don't Dox Yourself, which is great for streamers, great for YouTubers even, posting videos. Where is it? Anyway, I have it installed. I can't find it. Here it is. And what it does is if you open your secrets file, for example, then it will display. So first of all, if it's malformed, it'll just hide the whole thing. It's like, I don't know how to parse this. But if it is well formed, then it will only hide the values. It'll show you all of the keys, but it'll hide the values. So that's for JSON, it's for XML, it's for YAML, and it's really cool. It's really cool. So let's take a look at a clip from Thindle.
You think you're saving people?
Something tells me my friends are dead.
We had a plan. You don't
Or they're
understand.
turned.
You don't believe.
Could be turned from torture, you know? I care.
May God
Not so much about you,
have mercy on your soul.
but I care.
Sorry.
Does that guy have airplanes on his vest? Or coat?
Hello, Darian Live. Welcome in. We're having fun doing some database stuff. I'm changing my mind a lot. He said, that's very old. Yeah, you do a lot more programming on your streams and gaming lately. You did some of the Coursera courses. Awesome. How did they go? Did you do it with like a live instructor or a real-time instructor, I guess? Because not necessarily live per se. It's just that they are actively responding to you. Databases, yes. Thindle implements iCare. That's a great name for that clip. A room instructor. That's really cool. What courses did you do? That sounds apply. All right, well, with this, we might be able to not have to describe our relationships to each other, because you really don't want to hear about mine. Hey, there was an example of an XML file that has don't dox yourself applied to it. Super cool stuff. Okay, get rid of those two. I want to recreate my migration because I can't find my database context. We might not have to describe that relationship with the on delete cascade stuff because now we are actually doing a regular join. Not a regular join, sorry, a navigation property that will be for the transaction and for one account, and we don't have to worry about cycles when we're trying to delete one record from this table and then that cascading to delete from this table, which cascade deletes from this table again, and possibly goes back and forth until things break. So let's add our migration called initial create. We will skim through the code and find out what it's doing with our transfer transaction account stuff. Never have I ever added an on model creating thing. The is required max length can be added to properties. Yes, so we talked about that yesterday. One alternative to using Fluent API is by adding data annotations. So I could put key here. I could put string length to, which one is this? Oh, 80. I could do required. And so not only can you use these data annotations for your entity framework descriptors, you could also use them when you are doing model validation in things like an edit form, when you turn on data annotation validator. You can use it in things like getting the display name when you are printing out the label. So this will display as account name kind of thing. However, we aren't using our entities in our applications. We, as in what we're doing with this project, we're not using the entities in our application. We're going to be using view models on all of our pages, sometimes called data transfer objects, depending on how you use them. So those are the things that would have the data annotations on them. These are just entities that are describing tables in my database. that are essentially database agnostic. It just means that they're going to be hydrated with values from records that are pulled from my database. Then they're going to be transformed into the thing that my application uses. So I don't have a need to use data annotations on here, and I have a preference to use Fluent API because I prefer describing things this way. That course sounds awesome. So Debian Live, Darian Live says the course, one of the courses, or the course that I took was called Introduction to Artificial Intelligence. I would love to take that. That's okay, Tyron. They hired someone else. Things aren't looking very good for me. But I do have an interview with Google tomorrow. Oh, what? Thindle said, if I can just spread some happiness around, my headache from the deepest pits of the underworld has finally gone away. So happy for you, Thindle. The feeling of the absence of pain after having pain for so much. I love that feeling. But yeah, I think I just lost confidence from Tyron. That's already one too many things that Tyron is like, don't do it that way. You can't be on the same team as me. I don't like you. I don't like you anymore. Oh, but I'm still trying. I'm still trying. I'd rather, yeah, anyway. I'd rather move on and create my migration and skim through the migration to find out what is happening with my relationships between transfer, accounts, and transaction. So here is accounts with a PK and a foreign key into account type. Right. I did not put the descriptor here for transfer. And I would like to be able to navigate to account or to transfer from account. I just don't see the value. It's more code and further away from the object type that has those requirements. And he says, I'm a snarky old man. No, it makes sense. I mean, it's a good argument about it where you're keeping the descriptors close. I've just run into many situations where I've needed to do at least one of the descriptions in Fluent API, which I would rather have it all in one place. But I mean, it's a valid argument, you know, having things like the actual table name, the what's the primary key. A lot of my issues were when architecting the database, having fields that were slightly differently named than the navigation property. And so Entity Framework wasn't picking up the actual navigation property itself. If I run into that, I completely redo my database to not have to do it. Yeah. But I don't know. It's probably the same way that some people have opinions about people that use Vim. It's like there are other tools that you can use that are maybe a little bit more, they provide a different experience that might be easier to manage, arguably. So it's kind of the same argument for using data annotations over Fluent API. And once again, I'm using the term argument in a positive way. It means that you have a stance that you can provide reason for why to do that way. I'm a generally the end. I'm a generally Delete the migrations folder once again. Recreate the migration. Why didn't the actual file go away? Because it was in miscellaneous? I don't like migrations. People can see all my stupid mistakes. No worries, just do what Deflux does and make changes to your database and then rescaffold your database. Terrence says, my reason, I'm old and set in my ways. Not a good reason, but a reason regardless. Actually, the reason, you gave two really good reasons. You're like keeping the descriptors close to the objects themselves, and it's less code. Those are two very valid reasons. You're funny. I'm trying to find accounts again. Okay, so now my accounts has a relationship to transfers. Hello? Does transfer not have a relationship? Yeah, it does. Well, let me just make sure that account can at least get to, or that transfer can at least get to account. Transfer. Do you know how to get to account? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Okay, then. I'm happy with this. Let's try scripting it out and then applying it. If your DB models are only your DB models and not something you also expose out in the rest of your application, aka you're using mappers, I don't see a problem with using attributes. If it's something you expose outside of your data layer, I see it as cluttery. I'm kind of thinking of that the opposite. If I understand what you said, you would use data annotations if your database entities, if these models here were only being used for database entities. But you would not use data annotations if you are going to have them in your application. Like if you're using them as models to put data on a page. Because data annotations are also used for validation for data entry on a page. So it makes sense the opposite for me. If I was going to use my models as actual objects to display data on a page, then I would have data annotations. Dukasoft, no, don't. Scott says, thank you for teaching me about script migration. Yeah. So it used to be called something else in previous versions. But yeah. It's very helpful for me to look at both the C# code that's created as well as the SQL scripts to make sure that the IDs themselves are being set correctly, data types. They're getting set to the correct kind of database data type. Datetime 2, for example. Non-nullable bits for my deleted column. Yeah, so one problem with that Dukasoft that I've run into that is only a problem really with system.text.json, unless it's been fixed by now because it's been a long time since I've tried it, is when you return the results of a query from a database in your API and it tries to serialize it, it has this looping issue where, let's say we're trying to serialize an account, we get down to the associated transfers for that account, and we're trying to serialize one transfer object, and that one gets down to the account, then it tries to serialize that account, And so it's like now looping back and forth between transfer and account. So you're either telling it to, like if you're using Newtonsoft and there is a switch that pretty much says when you find a loop, then use a reference to the object, not try to create a new object anymore. You never run into that. Yeah. And the alternative is to either materialize your query, which is just to either to list it and make sure that anything that you want to include with it is loaded once and only once, and that it doesn't have any references back to the original parent object, or create a view model. And that's what I do. I create view models or data transfer objects. They're essentially, in my opinion, in my understanding, view models and data transfer objects are essentially the same, except that one is used for putting data on a page for people to see, and the other is used for moving data from one source to a destination and vice versa. Thindle said to Dugasoft, I'm in the middle of denormalizing my database so I can reference partial data from other sources than the main SQL database. I feel a bit dirty. I mean, like the entity framework team, 3 or 4 community, what are they called? The community things that the community stand up is what they're called. The community stand-ups that they've been having is they have said things about denormalizing databases in modern applications because we're not running into the same space limitations and we're more worried about computational depth, speed. And so when you denormalize a database, that means one less join. And you're managing your data via code, which means that you have less chance of mistyping repeated data. So let's say instead of having an account table, all of my transactions own an account object, which would be crazy, which means that you are essentially putting the account name and account type as a child object of this parent table, and it's repeating over and over and over. Which means that you have the potential of mistyping the account name. Or what if we want to allow the user to rename the account? Then you have to go through every single transaction, find the transactions that have this account with it, and rename those. It's like, that doesn't make sense to do. That's why I like relational databases. Data. 2Ds. Anyway, did we finish scripting? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to update database. No. There it is again. Transfers is still going to cause cycles on transaction. Why? Okay, so a transfer really would need to delete a transaction record. So if I deleted a transaction record, I would want to delete the associated transfer with that transaction record and transaction details. Stupid 1 to 0 or 1 relationships. Cat. No, I want to see the cat. You're not going to show me the cat if the number pad is up. That's sad. I won't be able to show you the cat. But in this case, if you store a count in a document database, the transactions could just be an array. True. But inside of that transaction, you also have a list of transaction detail, which each transaction detail has a line item type, which once again, those line item types are like subtotal, sales tax, blah, 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 blah. So then if you ask your database, give me all of the sales tax that I paid, the total sales tax that I paid from this account for the year, and break it up by who I paid it to. Same thing with payee. And yeah. Yeah, so SQL Server really does have a JSON column type. Right. But yeah, that's the thing. You would also be duplicating the data so that you can slice it differently. Okay. So yes, I'm still having an issue with deleting. Didn't I put a delete flag in here too? Detiled. So again, I want to soft delete a lot of things. I don't know that I want to soft delete a transaction though. Okay, how about this? We'll just say that when we do a transfer, if we delete a transfer record, we will not delete the associated transaction, and obviously not account. So let's configure that. So right there, Tyron, this would be an example of why I would turn to Fluent API, because I don't know how to re-architect my database such that when I affect my transfer record, I don't affect my transaction record for this navigation property here. Is there an attribute that I could put on this? Give me a second, Thindle, and I will answer your question, I promise. I want to think through this. Cascading delete. So entity has one optional, which we'll get to the optional part in a second. Transfer. Nice. I said transfer and I picked transaction detail. With one transaction. I know I want is required to be false eventually, but the thing that I'm trying to do is delete behavior on delete. Delete behavior. I knew it was called delete behavior. No action. So I want it to ignore, but does this need to be the other way around? Do I need to put this in the transfer table so that a transfer, I think I need to put this in transfer. Model builder entity transfer entity, all that stuff. Swap you two around. Okay, so this should say only when you're deleting from transfer will you not affect transaction, I hope. And if you delete from transaction, you will also delete the transfer. I can't guarantee that though. Okay, so Thindle was asking or stating, any thoughts on eventual consistency? In my opinion, it's a Pandora's box that risks being a huge headache. A huge headache. It's like an even less visible deadlock situation with data not being there when expected. As far as duplicate data equals times 2 data jokes. Profit? Yes. As far as deleting a transfer. Oh, dang it. That's what I get for paying attention. You didn't even. I don't have a migration to update. Just stop it. Thank you. Let me do this first. Okay. Not mapped. But it kind of does need to be mapped, Scott. Otherwise, I won't be able to use it as a navigation property. I would have to manually hydrate it every time I want to use it. And I don't want to do that. True. But it's still not telling it what rule to use when. Right. What rule to use when doing a delete. Because the foreign key is still going to exist regardless of whether I map it or not. Okay. So the answer, Thindle, is no. I'm not super concerned about consistency. Because the point would be what is the point? There is no good point. I don't want to soft delete transfers either. I want them to delete. So if I put not mapped on these two navigation properties, I'm still going to get them populated because the transaction ID and target account ID are still going to be populated, which is the thing that hydrates my transaction and account properties, but it's still not instructing Entity Framework what to do, or even SQL Server, what to do when we delete a transfer record. Right now it's saying cascading delete for transaction and account. And really, I don't want either of those to cascade delete. Let's see what this looks like. Not map just instructs Entity Framework to not use whatever property it is that you put not mapped on. To not use it as part of your database object, not part of your schema, not part of, just not part of your database. So for example, in that transaction table where I have the is transfer property, if I didn't have not mapped, it would try to make a column called is transfer. When really I just want this to be a helper property that tells me whether this transfer object here is null or not. In code only. If I wanted to do this in the database, then I would create a not full property, an auto property that is get set, but in the database, it would be a calculated field. Would it even be a calculated field? I don't even know how it would, yeah, because it would just be a lookup. Is there a transfer with this transaction ID? Yeah. But I don't want to do that. Go here. Go Jira. All right. Script migration, because it's easier for me to read this when I'm looking at foreign key constraints. Transfer. Yeah, so we aren't going to be doing any kind of cascade deletes in this case. Right now, this one is local local DB, MS SQL local DB. However, I do have SQL Server Developer on this machine, so I could use that. That would look like connection strings. Yeah, a lot of those are still left over from my previous job. But if you have SQL Server installed on your own machine, you could use server equals dot backslash or just dot if you don't have an instance name, but I have an instance. And I named my SQL Server instance on this machine, the name of my machine SQL, and then database, and because I'm going to be running this app from an account that does have the same access as my user, then I can use trusted connection true multiple active result sets. And the benefit of using the full SQL Server developer is that it acts just like, yeah, yes, Scott. It acts just like full SQL Server. So you get all of the development experience of what it would be like when you deploy it, aside from, connectivity issues. But Scott asked, it's best to always use secrets.json when you're putting in your connection strings, when you're putting in secrets. Because when you check your code into a repo, the only thing that goes with your code are the files that are in the same directory that you have not get ignored. And so you would get this default setting that you have in app settings. And then when you right click and do manage user secrets, this is a file that's stored on the development machine in your user directory, some place in there. And it is identified by this user secrets ID. And so if you clone your repo on a different computer or with a different account on the same computer or in a virtual machine, is it going to auto format it to one line? Auto format what? Like minify kind of auto format? Because that doesn't really need to happen. When I add things to secrets.json and save it and open it again, it makes it one line. I have never had that happen to me. Oh, yours actually turns it into the tree. I can't think of what it's called. Something about path. Path something or other. Anyway, Thindle, hey, I found a bug. It can't read this format unless I put a comma at the end. So if I have a key that has a colon in it, it doesn't know how to read it. No, I found another bug. But yeah, I don't actually have that issue. I've never experienced that issue before. Scott. I don't exactly know why it would do that. Okay, I'm happy with this. We're committing it. Oh yeah, Thindle said he's gonna go AFK. He can't hear me. And it looks like he's getting further this time. Hey, we now have in my developer SQL server the Finan Man database with all of our tables. Perfect timing. Perfect timing. That's awesome. So this was one thing that I think you wanted to see, Dukasoft, that wasn't quite clicking. Why would I use an enum as a thing when I also have the type in the database? So my lookup table is recurrence type in the database. That's this table over here on the left. And this is the enum that's representing it in code. This is how I seeded the data. So let me actually pull up the seed as well. Oh, it was in data helpers. Apps. Okay, so I'm seeding the data for this table in particular using an enum because that enum is not going to change very often or at all. I don't plan on making any changes to this static list of values that's going to exist in the database. So the reason that I want it to exist in the database is because there is another table that has the recurrence type as a column. And so this recurrence type ID here is referring to a record in that recurrence type table. So if I have a 1, 15th, count numbers 1, which doesn't exist, so this probably isn't going to let me save. Payee is going to be 1, and memo is going to be I have to pay this every month on the 15th because reasons. It's not going to save because I don't have any accounts or any payees, but you'll notice that I would have to have the recurrence type in there. When I'm creating this record, though, I would have a UI pen, pineapple. That was terrible. Pen. I would have a UI. Dang it, I made my screen smaller. That has radio buttons that says how often, once, weekly, etc., 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 which I don't have to go to the database to populate this list of recurrence types, nor do I have to go there when I'm associating this new scheduled transaction. Instead, I will get the recurrence type ID when I select one of these enums from, as a radial button selection. So I have benefits for using the enum as a named thing. Oh, yeah. And the other thing is when I am processing my rules, so I have some kind of mechanism in the background, maybe it's a service worker, maybe it's just while the app is running, it'll update, but it'll say pending transactions or scheduled transactions or something. And as I'm looking for my list of scheduled transactions, then this thing is going to determine when should I say the next transaction is for a given scheduled transaction. So I would have a method find next scheduled. And that method would do stuff like, based on the recurrence type, switch on recurrence type, do some logic to get the actual next date. So if we can name our recurrence type dot once, as opposed to saying recurrence type from the database, give me back the name of that recurrence type, and if that recurrence type is the string once, which I have since renamed to one time, then that rename is not going to take in my application, but the enum rename certainly will. I hope that one made sense. I was a little bit unclear about that one, but hopefully it made sense. Oh, dang it. You can see the top of this way up here. Excuse me. Okay, anyway, we're done with our database shenanigans. I said shenanigans. Yeah, quite welcome. And if you want me to go into more information about it, I can be a little bit clearer. But what I'm going to do is chicken this code and say created, finalized the database entities, recreated migration, and we also applied rules on save changes. And of course, if we need more details, we can just read the actual checked-in files. So that's it for our database stuff. We're going to call that good for now. As you can tell, I'm starting to wrap up because I didn't realize we were 10 minutes over almost, and I need to get back to studying. Next time, we're going to start doing some UI design, maybe. We have an underlying database. Like, I never really know which side I want to start on, really. Sometimes I start with just slapping together a UI, throwing controls on there, and then filling in the logic behind. Other times it's like, let's create the library for doing all of this functionality that we're going to eventually want to do in our app. So I guess we'll make that decision tomorrow. Here is me on YouTube. So I will be posting, thank you for the reminder, Dukaso, you're so awesome. And thank you, Avidus, for saying it was a good stream. I will be posting yesterday's video on YouTube immediately after I'm done here, and then I'm going to go grab a snack and then get back to studying. But yeah, I'll be back again tomorrow, 10 a.m., 10:30 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, which is UTC -6 currently. Hope to see you there. If you come back by, it's going to be great. Otherwise, if I don't see you, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, day, whatever time it happens to be. Okay, ciao for now. Until next time. Why does this camera always take...